Having Ben here is obviously a huge treat. For those of you who don't know, Ben's at YouGov. YouGov's a tremendous supporter of this live stream, and they produce the absolute best data on gamers, games, esports fans all around the world. I want to do what we call a YouGov Insights segment today. It's a lot of fun. We have data from Ben from YouGov, a study they actually did, and we're going to talk about it, and it's a treat every time. So I'm going to bring it up here. And this is everyone's, I think, favorite current topic, NFTs. The first question asked is, how much do you know about NFTs? Go ahead, Ben.
The question here is, recently NFTs have become a topic of interest on a scale from 1 to 5. How would you rank your knowledge of NFTs? So the grand takeaway here, the red line are esports fans. Then we're looking at traditional sports fans, which was a combination of MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA. And then also looking at Gen Pop. So, I mean, really the takeaway is in the trend. So the first question is people who said they've never heard of NFTs between kind of like Q4 of last year bleeding into January and then the last 3 months. And we see across the board, it's down, right? But just looking at the order of things, esports fans the entire time were least likely to agree that they've never heard of NFTs. And today, only 7% of esports fans say they've never heard of NFTs, which is kind of a negligible number. Overall, though, there's 28% of all Americans who still say they've never heard of NFTs. But I think that's a pretty incredible takeaway, too. Like, there's only a quarter of Americans, right? It's low. Yeah. And then we look at the flip side. So it was a 5-point scale, right? We saw the question at the bottom of the page. So knowledgeable of NFTs is anyone who says they have at least some knowledge of NFTs, all the way up to consider themselves an expert. And so now a full 2/3 of esports fans consider themselves in this bucket, up from 55% towards the end of the year. And then similarly, like a quarter of all Americans were kind of there, and now it's up to 1/3. So, and then kind of the big driver here, we see obviously like esports fandom is a really high indicator of knowledge about NFTs, but also sports fandom and in age being 18 to 34 versus older than that is also a very high indicator of just general NFT wisdom. Esports fans are 7x more likely to have ever purchased an NFT than the average American. And compared to even sports fans between the ages of 18 and 34, an esports fan is 2x more likely. And kind of a similar trend for people who have looked into it. I think it's amazing that half of esports fans or viewers have done some research on the space. And it's pretty incredible.
I'm curious how many of those were the free 100 Thieves drop. Right. I think that was an interesting one. But also, to me, it's interesting because you mentioned sports being one of those sort of, where there's correlation, sports of any kind, esports and otherwise. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's just like the psychology around collectibles and sports, or, that maybe there's some of that playing into here, that people are just used to that.
I think so. There's already a history of taking some ownership of the game through, cards, and now it's digital cards or clips or, whatever NFTs evolve to be, right? Like we're living in it live. But yeah, so I think the kind of just the practice of trading things is more active among sports fans. This was just looking at, so where the other one was a roll up across the last 7 months. This is just looking at those 2 time periods again from the first slide and seeing growth. It's the same question as before. So bought or have looked into buying an NFT. We see while the esports fans are still 5x more likely than Gen Pop, the growth is fairly flat, with 3 points up. The interesting one here, I think, is the sports fans 18 to 34, having the biggest bump. But all these, there's not, I wouldn't say these are huge trends overall, but definitely, positive growth across the board. This is kind of drawing some causality to what types of NFTs people are into, and is it coming from a team matter? And we see among esports fans again, they are a lot more interested. In general, if it comes from a team, but even over the last these two time periods, the last 7-8 months, that is overall has increased. But again, to the point I just made, Jeff, it did come down this past month. Just didn't have it on the slide, but still, over the last 3 months, it's up from the 3 months prior. So I thought it was interesting here. Again, we see the sports fans also, sports fans 18 to 34 bumping up. So here's where we can really see. But age is has a bigger impact than being a sports fan alone.
Doesn't this slide, in my mind, totally debunks some of the fear that exists out there around gamers and NFTs? And I think what I'm seeing here is maybe there's an aversion to NFTs in games amongst the mainstream gamer population, like doing an NFT as a weapon skin in Rainbow Six. Where there doesn't seem to be an aversion in this data, at least, is if you're a fan of a team, you are likely to buy an NFT from them, or to at least to purchase an NFT from your favorite team.
Well, really, it really says you're more likely to purchase that NFT than from another source. So it's still not necessarily saying you will, but like if you're gonna buy an NFT, you'd be a higher considerer of one that comes from your favorite team.
It almost says something about the strong nature of the fan bases of these.
Right.
I see the point you're making, Paul, but I think with Ben's distinction, I don't know if it's as linear of a conclusion as what maybe you were saying, but it strikes me as it's just people. It shows the passion that these fan bases have to their teams.
Yeah, I mean, for those that are listening and not watching, an 8-point change on this esports fan / viewer, that's massive, right? They're incredibly susceptible in 5 months. The way I read that too was aligned with Jeff, which was these guys are strong fans of the brands they follow, but they're susceptible or rather trusting of those brands and what those brands are trying to sell them, right? So take that, for NFTs. I wonder if that correlates to other sponsorship or other sales outside of that, but fascinating nonetheless.
Here's a question to everybody. How's Top Shot doing?
Not so great. In terms of trading volumes and stuff like that.
And so when I see Top Shot and the audience that they have, to get a breakdown as to the younger generation who's getting those things, because I still do firmly believe that an esports team, they have to monetize with something. And I will, buy something to support my team. And hopefully it becomes something valuable one day, but not necessarily because I'm trying to, capitalize off of it, just support. So I do think these numbers are legit from an esports viewership, especially from the adoption standpoint. Sure, they may be yelling and screaming online about how they hate play to earn or whatever it is they want to complain about. But, I wouldn't mind having an optic something that I can say is mine.
Ben, this is always one of my favorite segments. I know for people who are looking for, more in-depth data or data on something specific to their business, you can absolutely reach out to Ben. Right on LinkedIn or anytime, or any of us. Also, go to yougov.com/BOE. I'm putting it in all the chats that will allow me. I know this will be there eventually, right, Ben? If it's not there already, I actually have to check.
Yeah, we'll get this up there for sure.
So if you guys want to dig into this in more detail, you want to spend more time with it, absolutely go to yougov.com/BOE. Ben, thanks so much for that segment. It's always interesting.